All right, Nico, can you say, welcome to another episode of Healthy Births, Happy Babies?
It's a happy episode. Happy babies.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Healthy Births, Happy Babies. It's been quite a while since I put out new content to you, my regular listeners, so I apologize if you've been searching on your phone, wondering when a new episode is going to come out. Today's the day, it's here, so thank you for being a loyal listener. If you're a brand new listener, then you don't know that there's been a gap. So I'll welcome myself back. I'm Dr. Jay Warren. I'm a host of your podcast. And the reason why I haven't been putting out as much content on this podcast is because I've been busy with so many other great things, but I want to get back to providing materials to you as well. We've been expanding like crazy here at Cap Wellness in San Diego here. We're bringing on new practitioners to fill those needs. We're teaching new classes, and I've been taking a very active role in helping with that expansion. So it's been really exciting that we're going to be able to grow and expand because there's so many pregnant moms and babies and new families that need our help. So that's an amazing, amazing thing that we're doing. I've also become an instructor. I'm teaching with the ICPA, which is the major organization within chiropractic that teaches all of us prenatal and pediatric chiropractors, trains us on the work we do, and they've invited me to be an instructor. So I put together an online course that's now available for those docs, teaching them the pre and perinatal psychology work that I've talked about here on this podcast, but I've studied for years, and now other chiropractors are going to be able to learn it as well to teach it to the new families they take care of around the country and around the world. And it's an amazing honor to be included in these instructors and in this kind of teaching faculty that have been my mentors for my 19 years of being a chiropractor. It's amazing. And it's a first offering of online programming to their teachers. So I've been able to help them with that. I've been podcasting a lot on my other dad's podcast, and that brings us to today's content. I'm coming back with new content that's really kind of a cross-pollination of the dad's work that I've been doing. And there's a number of speaking engagements that I'm going to be doing later on in the year. We've started Dad's Group here in the Cap Wellness Center that we're meeting monthly, and that's been an amazing offering for the dads that are needing support out there, because we're having a tough transition to fatherhood just as much as women listening may be having a tough transition into motherhood, and there's just not a lot of services. There's not a lot of meetings. There's not a lot of resources out there for dads. So I'm definitely committed to being someone that helps with that. The Dad's Group is part of it. And this podcast episode is part of it as well, because today's guest, I have Byron Smith on. He's the author of my favorite book on dads, on fatherhood, on parenting, and it's called The Power of Dadhood. I found it actually back when I had the idea of doing my Dadhood Journey podcast and coming up with the names and looking like what was out there. I was Googling dadhood and seeing what was out there, and I came across Mike's book, and I just loved the title and, the few excerpts of it that I found. So I bought the book, and like I said, it's become my favorite book on parenting and specifically for dads. I recommend it a ton in the coursework that I've developed around the importance of dad and the transition of fatherhood and the importance of dad and pregnancy and birth and the postpartum period. I've referenced his materials a ton, and I just kind of on a lark and going through his book once again, reached out to him and, just kind of threw it out there like, hey, would you like to be on the podcast? And he graciously said yes. So I am really excited to share the conversation that I had with him. This interview goes over a lot of just general principles that are true for men going through the transition into fatherhood. It's true whether you're raising boys, whether you're raising girls. It's just about being a dad and checking in with yourself. And It comes from his perspective of being a grandfather now. He'll share his story, and in his bio, he'll share his story, but he came through a tough upbringing, did not have a great experience with his own dad, and he broke that cycle. He changed it around, wanted to be the best dad he could possibly be, and then when he became a grandfather, he wanted to share this wisdom, and he's put together this fabulous book. It's called The Power of Dadhood, and I'll link to it in the show notes so you can check it out. But before I introduce Mike to you and switch over to our interview conversation, I want to put out an invite to all of you dads listening. If you're a mom listening to this and you'd like your partner to be listening to this, share the episode with them so they can hear this message. And the invite to you dads is to become part of our dads group. If you're local here in San Diego, excellent. Reach out to me, email me, and I'll get you information about when and where our meetings are held, and so you can be a part of an in-person, face-to-face dads group here. But we're also forming an online group. As part of this local group, instead of doing a Facebook closed group and communicating that way, we're doing things in Slack. It's another platform. It's used a lot in a business setting and kind of a workplace setting, and so we've formed a dads group within Slack that if you reach out to me, give me your email address, I can send you the invite there, and then you can be part of the community that we're starting there. It's functioning as a support for the dad, just knowing when the events are that we're doing, the gatherings, the meetings, whether it's the monthly meeting here, or if we're doing, going to do a play date or something like that, or a meetup somewhere during the month. That's for that communication. But largely nationally, as more and more dads are reaching out to me in the work that I'm doing for dads, you can be a part of getting support from other dads that are going through the same experience you are, and you giving support to other dads that need it. We dads need support from everywhere we can get it, and there's a unique type of support and camaraderie that comes from other men, other dads going through the same thing. So this is dads only. It's for new dads to be that have questions about it. That's even better, because then you're able to learn more right before you jump into it. And it's for dads that have older kids as well. So it doesn't have to be just for like newborns and toddlers. I mean, I myself, like my kiddo's starting kindergarten in a little bit at the time of this recording. So it's a big transition I'm heading into and wanting to learn as much as I can to help him support through it. And then all kinds of dads that's been showing up, their ages are all over the place. So dads that have kids that are older can support the other dads because they've been through it before. And even if you're a new dad and your kid's young and you're still learning a ton about it, you're still going to be able to contribute and add value to the other dads there by sharing your experience and them learning from you and what's going on in your life. So it's going to be a safe environment for men to just share what's really going on and ask for support and get really good, high quality advice and support from other dads. So again, email me. It's drj@drjwarren.com directly, and put dad's group in it, and I'll get you that invite. Or you can go onto my website, which is drjwarren.com, and look in the Dadhood Journey section, looking in the dad section, and you'll find the link to be invited into Slack as well. So now let me introduce Mike to you, and we can get to the content around the power of dadhood. So Michael Byron Smith is an advocate for healthy families with an emphasis on fathering. He's a 69-year-old father of 3 and a grandfather to 4. He's a retired U.S. Air Force Colonel and a former B-52 pilot. Michael's the oldest of a family of 6 that struggled. His alcoholic father was irresponsible in his role as a parent. The impact this had on Mike's siblings and the 2 generations after that motivated him to be the best father he could be. Michael broke the cycle of dysfunctional families by earning a college scholarship and joining the Air Force ROTC. After retirement, he dedicated himself to helping fathers to be dads. That's the name of his Dadhood blog, and by becoming the author of this book we're going to talk about, The Power of Dadhood. So let me switch now over to my conversation with Mike and enjoy. All right, Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, well, welcome, Jay. I'm happy to be here, happy to be on the Dadhood journey with you. I think we got places to go on this journey and hopefully it'll help other people, other dads.
Well, I am really excited to have you on, and it's fitting. This is the first interview episode I've done on my Dadhood Journey podcast, and it's fitting that it's you, simply because when I was starting the idea of my Dadhood Journey podcast and kind of coming up with a name, I was Googling things, and that's how I found your book and got it right away. And it's been, I have to just say, like, I'll start right from the beginning. Your book has been really, really helpful for me as a dad. It's put together really, really well. I've recommended it a ton. I was telling you before we even started that my copy here has dog ears and underlines and highlights all over the place because in other works and courses I've created for dads, I reference your work a lot. So reaching out to you and you saying yes to be here to have this conversation is a thrill for me, and I know it's going to be fantastic for the other dads that are listening. So one, I just want to acknowledge you and appreciate you for your work that you've done. And then two, I'm really excited to jump in this conversation and have you share why I'm so excited about what the work is so other dads can hear it as well.
Well, I can't tell you how good it makes me feel to know that someone like you have looked at my book and has got things out of it, because I don't get a lot of feedback. I get some. But, you know, when you go into a venture like this, and this is my first book I ever wrote. I'm writing a second, but this is the first one I ever wrote. I'm not really an author, a writer. I'm an engineer and I'm an ex-pilot. So really writing was something I wasn't really into. But this was an important topic to me, very important topic, because I've seen it from both sides. I'm a grandfather, so I've gone through the whole cycle of being a parent. And I was also a child. And I was a child, and I went through that cycle of being a child. I had a terrible experience as a child with my father because he was not around for us, and when he was a disturbance to us. And I was the oldest of 6 children, and I was the only one who even graduated from high school. So they all had issues because of our nomad existence. We couldn't pay our bills. We moved from house to house, from apartment to apartment, and it was very disruptive. And I went to like 35 different schools because of that.
No kidding.
So, yeah,
Jeez, that's a lot of transition, a lot of instability for you as a child.
Yeah, it was like 3 schools a year until I got to high school. And when I got a license, I had a clunker car, and we moved again, but I wasn't going to move again from school. So I stayed in same high school for 3 years. I'd never stayed in a school for longer than a year. My record is 4 years, and that was college. So longest I ever went to any school was my college. So anyway, in summary, I had a bad childhood with a bad father, and I wanted to be everything my father wasn't. And as I got closer to retirement, I wanted to write down things that I learned as a father to help my family. And I'm talking about my sons and my daughters and my nieces and nephews, etc. But I got down to so much work that I decided I'm going to try to publish this thing. And this is where it came out of. So it was something to help my family. And as I got into it deeply, I decided to have it published. I was lucky enough to find a publisher and went from there. And it's been a joy. It's been a joy to write it. It was a joy to talk about it. And I appreciate this opportunity.
Right, well, and it's an amazing process that you've gone through, and to have written it as a grandfather, having gone through fatherhood with your children, that really. And when we were first talking about doing this interview in the first place, I had said the advice and the stories and the principles that you're talking about in your book are really what I was saying and what we'll say are kind of timeless. It's not kind of fad parenting of this is what we should be doing in these years type of thing. It's very timely in that, as dadhood is, right? But it's these it's these principles that are tried and true that you've seen over the generations. And I just have to ask, like, as a child growing up the way you did with the way your father was, did you have any reservations about becoming a dad yourself? Or did you know you wanted to be a dad and you were just going to do everything it took to not be your dad?
Oh, I wanted to be a dad very, very badly. It's like the best thing that's ever happened to me, and being a grandfather is even better.
Yeah.
So no, he did not. There was nothing he did to make me not want to be a father, because I knew I wasn't going to be like him, and I wanted to see that it could be done right. But not having any example to go by, this book I could not have written as a young father. I had to be a grandfather to write it.
Yes.
I had to go through all these things. And I had to go through them, and I still know what it's like to have little kids, because I babysit like 20 hours a week to 4 grandchildren. And so I know the troubles that they bring about, So, yeah, I've seen it from many sides, as a father, a grandfather, and as a son, and as a brother and to my siblings. So I thought I had enough. See, I'm not an expert, and I don't claim to be an expert, but I think of myself as a mentor. And that's what this book is. It's a mentoring book.
Right.
It's a way. It's a stimulator for dads, and it's a reference book for dads, and it's also a baseline for parents to discuss things. You may not have to agree with what I say in there, but you'll see what I have to say, and you can discuss it and come to your own mind, which you think should be done best in raising your children.
Right. Well, and I think that really comes through in a mentoring sense, like that. One of the things I get that is like calming and rereading passages and like about kind of like the phases, and like these are things that have come up and then they go away. But in the trenches of being a dad, you feel like, like we're locked in this. It's going to be like this forever. But having the perspective of that kind of like wise grandfather, and I get great advice from my dad as well, because he's seeing like it from the other end of all the things that like were seemingly so important when he was a dad to us as kids, like you see with time that they're not as important, and other things are like, wow, I really wish I'd done this. And having another reference that's in a book anytime, and if a dad doesn't have a dad to like look to or get advice from, again, it's a really great resource in that way.
I suffered tremendously myself with this not having a there. I was a very shy kid, and I was very afraid of everything, and I had nobody push me to make me stronger. And I and going into new schools times a year, it was just horrifying, because you see all these kids staring at you, wondering what is this guy like, and here I'm acting a little bit shy and milk toasty, and I just didn't have a backbone back then, and I am totally a different person today. I'm kind of ashamed of the kind of person I was as a kid, but but understanding why I was like that kind of makes it easier to handle. So I'd like to just throw in real quickly that when I wrote this book, I wanted to make it kind of like, you brought this up already, but kind of like a timeless fatherhood book, because the way I got myself out of how I was as a kid without having a father or even an uncle or a grandfather around to help me is I met when I was in the service, I met an NCO, and I told his NCO, and I was a captain at the time, and I said, you know what, I'm having trouble. I finally went to this guy because I trusted him, and I said, I'm having trouble. I just don't feel confident enough to do certain things, etc. And I'd already done a lot of things, but it never gave me the confidence that I wanted. And he suggested a book to me to read, and that book helped me so much. I started getting into self-help books. Okay, and so a lot of the principles that I have, I took the self-help books that I took and focused them into being a father. So you'll see a lot of stuff in here that looks like about self-help stuff, but it's as a father, how you can help your kids with self-help. Here's a self-help for your kid.
Right.
And so I use a lot of self-help principles. So that's where I got, and of course I did a lot of research on fathers, experts on fathering and things like that. So the combination of experts, psychologists who know about raising kids, and self-help books is how I put this all together.
Yeah. I mean, it's with going back to like that, the lack of the father figure to help pushing you and other things. Like, what did you going into your own like fatherhood, like see that you as a man and as a dad was bringing to the table for your kids that was different than what mom would be bringing to the table?
Well, because I knew that I had to do things to, when my children had fears, I knew about fear. And I wanted to introduce fear to them in a mild, easy way, so they can learn to not be afraid of certain things. You know, in my book I talk about this. If kids are afraid of other kids, you know, you need to get them into Boy Scouts or something. And they may not want, but they need that experience to get around other children and things. Swimming, you know, I have a story in there about how I was afraid of water and swimming, and this man helped me lose my fear of water, and conquering that lesson of losing my fear of deep water was more of a lesson on how to get rid of fear itself, and things like building confidence. You know, you've got to build confidence in your kids gently and give them experiences that they can conquer that aren't too easy, you know, but aren't too hard. Not so easy that, you know, it didn't really add anything to what they did. You can't make it too easy. You can't make it too hard. You make it just right in the middle. And there's a little, and so those are some of the things that you know, and you've got to, everything is watching your kids. You know, I've never watched any of us or cared what we did or thought or felt. But if you watch your kids and you watch their face and you know how they react to certain things, and you can tell, I need to help them with this thing, you know. You can watch how they act, and you see them, you know, if they're afraid of playing ball and they're afraid of a ball, you get out there and help them not be afraid of a ball, you know. If you see them avoid certain friends or certain kind of friends, you got to watch your kids and find out what their weaknesses are, because if you don't look, you don't know what they are, and you're not going to be able to help them.
Right. And what I loved about, like, in those advice you have around, like, helping with those fears are always in that kind of nurturing, supportive way, rather than, like, throwing them into the deep end type of sense, which definitely resonates with me as a dad, that I, you know, I didn't have quite the adverse background that you did, but like I had a lot of insecurities as a kid, and I compensated by being the good kid and things like that. But I know what it's like to feel uncomfortable with like strangers and going into new environments and the nervousness. And so when I see that in my son, like I want to, with him as a 4 and 5-year-old now, put him in environments where he's set up for success, so he builds that muscle, so that when he goes into other things later on, he's got some references to go in through. And that is something that really resonated with me with the way you were writing and advising, and keeping an eye on your kid, but also yourself, which we'll talk about again with later on with your self checklist. But that advice, like, I think is really important for dads to hear and to have tools to work with.
That's, you know, the things I want my fathers to know from my book was how important they are and why they're important. And I talk about that, and I talk about being there. The most important thing you can do is be there for them. Just be there. Mm-hmm. If you do that, you're 80% there. And so you don't have to be a perfect father. There are no perfect fathers. We know that. There's no expert fathers. There's caring fathers, and there's loving fathers. And that's what, if you do that, everything else is going to be okay. Yeah. You'll make mistakes, but if you're loving and caring, everything else is going to be okay.
And that kind of reassurance, I definitely think can come from a grandfather's perspective, different than anywhere else, because of that kind of perspective of, like, you're going to make mistakes. There's going to be things that happen. That's part of life, and that's part of dadhood. And it's not a matter of like saying the perfect thing when they're having this upset. It's like, I mean, we can get better and better at that with practice, obviously, but also like being there to be with your kid going through it together is more than half the battle. And having that as like a confidence and a security and a resource for them is much more than we give a lot of dads give ourselves credit for, because we're always there, or not always there, but we don't have the experience that you had as a child of not having anybody to go to, right? Like we're already there. So we don't think like us being there is all that big a deal, but that perspective is so important for dads to hear over and over.
The other thing is parents in general and fathers need to know that sometimes perception is more important than perfection. Because if you might give them something wrong, you might try to help them, and you might do it wrong. But their perception of you wanting to help them is the most important thing. If you screw up your kid, but they know you were trying to help, that is so warming to them. They don't care about the mistake if they know what you were trying to do was to be there for them.
Right. Yeah, my dad, I had a conversation with him years ago. This is before, even before I became a dad, but he had said something where he called it kind of like a sandbox parenting, in that he wanted to set up a safe environment, like a sandbox, literally with like four edges for us to play within, to feel safe to play within. But then naturally a kid wants to go outside of the play box, or the sandbox, and looking back to us, and I would look back to him like, is it okay? And sometimes it was okay, and sometimes it wasn't, but it was that looking back, like for reassurance of like, is he with me? And all parents, not just dads, but that, I think, kids thrive within boundaries, but I think kids, as you were saying, like they have a lot of fears. And so like knowing there's safety around them allows their confidence to build and for them to thrive more, rather than if they're feeling unsafe all the time, they'll tend to hole up and not put themselves out as much.
Yeah, fathers can work both ways. I had a brother who was more the opposite. He was pushing the boundaries so far, he was getting in lots of trouble. So, there's different ways. All of us had different ways of I don't want to say suffering, but I can't think of a better term, of our father's way of not caring for us. He was very capable of providing money for us, but he never did. He drank it, or he spent it on himself. Mm-hmm. My mom was not educated woman. She was a fifth grade education, so she had to raise us on waitress tips. Yet he let us live like that, knowingly. It's unfathomable to me how someone could ignore their family like that and let their family suffer. But he did it, and I know there's others that do it too. And those kind of people aren't going to be listening to your dadhood journey, unfortunately. And that's the problem with a book like mine. The people that really need to read it probably won't even touch it.
Yeah,
the ones that pick it up don't need it as much. They may learn something at home, but they don't need it as much. But boy, my experiences through my blog and through my book is women are the ones that buy it, and they give it to their husbands.
Is that right? They find it to help their partners? Yeah, right. And it bothers me a bit because when I originally wrote this book, my subtitle was A Better Society, One Child at a Time. But my publisher changed it to How to Become the Father Your Child Needs. And the reason that bothers me is if a wife or a mom or a grandmother or an aunt or somebody or a sister hands this to their brother, son, etc., and it says down there, How to Become the Father Your Child Needs, it kind of says like, well, you're not yet, If you give it to a new dad, then it's okay. But you give it to a guy that's got a 10-year-old, and it says, you're not the father your child needs. This is how to do it. So, I can't help that it says that, but I hope people don't get the wrong impression. Anybody who's listening to this is not saying you're doing it wrong and this is the right way. It's not that. It's a helpful book. It's to help you. It's not going to change. It's not supposed to change you except for ways you want to change. Exactly. No, and having read it, I would never have taken it that way at all. It's in a kind of self-help type of thing. It's like what kind of dad are you being now, and you have a way of leading people through in chapter by chapter of like, is that working or is it not working? That's maybe my languaging around it. And if it's working, let's enhance that. And if it's not working, here's some ways of tweaking that. And never in a sense like, this is how you handle tantrums, or this is how you handle lying, or whatever it might be. No. It's really in a bigger perspective of like, all right, what are the qualities you want to have your adult child to have, and then how do we kind of instill that in them for as early on as possible.
Yeah. No, thank you for noticing that, because it's not a nuts and bolts kind of book. It's not how to change a diaper or anything like that.
No.
It's how to grow a child into a responsible adult, basically, and how you can help to do that.
Right.
So no, there's no nuts and bolts in there. It's just kind of like a framework that you can go by to help your child.
Right. And having, been in the dad space and becoming a dad, and then also like being in the dad space with the work I do, like I've looked at, I can't say every book on fatherhood by any means, but a lot of them. And I'm not just saying this to you, Mike, but like yours is my favorite because it's very tangible.
No.
It is timely and timeless at the same time. It resonated really strongly with me, and every dad that I've turned on to it has said the same thing. So like, I know as an author, in the same way in podcasting, it can be kind of anonymous and you have no idea if anybody's listening or reading and everything like that, but just to add some more feedback to you that is making a big difference. And that's why, I was wanting to reach out to you to see if we'd come on and talk about this. And, in that, to echo back into that reflection, like I would love for you to talk about your self-inspection checklist that you've put into your book. And it's something that is really helpful as a tool, and that is ongoing, and it's in the back of your book. So like, is there a story behind like how that came up? Was that crafted for the book, or was that something you were doing?
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was the last minute ad. I tell the story of why I put it in there, because I was an Air Force guy, and we did a lot of things we did self-inspections all the time. So what I did was I thought maybe I should put a checklist in there for dads to look at. And so what I did was I read my book over again, and as I read my book, I wrote questions down. So it might be a good idea if somebody was to buy my book, or they used to be in bookstores. I don't think there are much anymore, but open the book up and read the dad self-inspection checklist in there. And as you read those questions and you answer them to yourself, and they're tailored to different areas, like a new dad, a family question, like that. As you read them, you realize that in my book somewhere I'm talking about that. And so if you I say, well, I'm a fail here, I'm a fail there, I'm a fail there. Well, you can go into my book and find out what I might say about that. So, it's almost probably a good thing to do is when you pick up the book is go to the self-inspection checklist first and read what's there. And you'll know what's in the book by reading the checklist.
Right. And it has, it's broken down nicely, and there's like 5 different sections. One is about, are you really there for your children? And it leads you all these questions, and you can say yes or no, and it prompts you to, pat yourself on the back if you're doing well, but then say, oh, I haven't been doing that. And the next section is about helping your children face their fears. You bring up, like, does your family work together and support each other? So that's working with your spouse. And how well are you doing in that? And then there's a pure like self part of being a dad is like, are you a good example to your children? And like, because they're modeling us, right? And there's so much that like you see them, especially now that my kid's 5, like there are things that he does that he definitely, like, whether it's a tone of voice, a certain word, a certain way of doing things, he got from me. And that's cute in a way until it's something where like, ooh, okay, let's not have you do that in public,
Oh yeah.
And so that is like bringing the awareness of like you as a person in the world is your kids modeling that allows a dad to take another level of responsibility.
Right. The kids, they believe what they see a lot more than they believe what they hear. So you can say whatever you want, but if you don't do it that way, or if they don't watch you doing what you said, they're not gonna believe you or go with it.
Right.
And then on the other end, one of my 4-year-old granddaughter once said a bad word, and I knew exactly where it came from. It was my daughter, who says a certain word. It's not a terrible word, but it's not good for a 4-year-old.
Yes.
And so I said, you better quit saying that around her because she's picking it up.
Right.
So you got to watch yourself. You got to watch your kids, but you got to watch yourself too.
Yeah.
When you're around your kids.
Right.
You can sometimes be a different person when you're not with them. And I don't advocate being there for your kid 24/7 either, as you might have seen in my book. You got to have time for yourself as a dad. Don't say that. Well, geez, this guy says I need everything's being a dad. Well, a lot of it's being a dad, but you can still be yourself. You still have to have time for yourself, and so does your wife,
right.
Or the mother. So yeah, it's not 24/7. You can do your own thing, and when you get home, you'll be a dad again. So.
Right,
Yeah,
and I've seen that
yourself
okay, go ahead.
Yeah, if you want to lock yourself in your downstairs, or like the mom does in her bathroom to get away, you don't do that once in a while because you need to.
Right. You got to recharge, and especially like those other, so whether it's self-care or just doing some things that you enjoy that happen to be separate from the family, if that like fills you up, you're more present, more satisfied, more happy coming back to being a dad. And that's really important to show that you as a person is happy. And that is modeling self-care and being independent and doing the things that you like to your kids, rather than getting the story of you do cool things in your life until you become a dad, and then you just become a dad and like clean everything up and make sure everybody gets to bed. There's more to it than
you
that.
don't want to be a bitter You don't want to be a bitter man saying, boy, I used to be able to do this, and now with kids I can't. That's going to make you not a very good father.
No.
So you do have to give yourself those things that make you happy on the side, and still you can still be a good father. Like I said, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be the model father. You just have to be loving and caring, and when you're with them, listen and watch them. And man, that's all you need.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, you've seen it. I mean, you've raised your own kids. Now your kids are raising kids. Like, one of the last questions I wanted to ask you is like, so how are you seeing your kids as parents now? Like, do you think they're doing a good job? Are you mentoring them as well as that? Like, are you proud of the way they're parenting because it shows you did a good job?
Well, I have three children. My son is in the Army, and he's not married. My 2 daughters are married and have 2 kids apiece, and they're excellent parents, and they're successful people. And it just, and this is not on me. It's a mere fact that my dad and mom had 6 children, and they all had issues. Me too. My kids, I was a hands-on father with a great mother, and my kids are all very successful.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't make a lot of money, but they're in jobs that help people. One's a Army warrant officer, one's a college career counselor, and the other is not a physical therapist, but a occupational therapist.
Okay.
So they're all in jobs that help other people, and they enjoy that. Nice. And I'm so proud of them for what they do. And the kids, the kids are kids, but they're good kids. But I do have trouble with them once in a while.
Yeah. And
I'm challenged by my own book about how to handle those things. so I'm still practicing.
Yes. It's a lifelong endeavor, isn't it?
Yeah. And you don't stop being a dad, no matter how old your kids are.
Mm-hmm.
They really do look up to you more than you know. Because I've been surprised by that a few times, that you don't know that they're listening, but they really are.
Well, so Mike, in our last minutes here, like, first tell people like where they can get your book, if you have website resources and everything, so they can connect with you.
Yes, I think I have my book is from Familiar So you can get the book at Familius.com. That is the publisher, but probably the easiest way to do it for most people is just go to Amazon and type in The Power of Dadhood, and you can get the book that way. I have a website. It's my name, michaelbyronsmith.com, and the most important part of that book is that website is my blog. And I've written somewhere around 350 to 400 different articles on parenting advice. So that's how I keep involved. That's how and putting that out is that's the only way I know how to publicize my book, is putting out those things. And really I have no real platform other than my blog, and thank people like you come along to help me out with getting the word out. And I really appreciate what you've done for me being able to talk about it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, but I'm just appreciative of you too, the Little Mutual Appreciation Society here, but for what you're doing, and I just want everybody to know about it because it's really touched me and helped me, and that's what I like doing is having conversations with people that are doing great things and have helped me, and then if we can spotlight it to help one other dad, it's totally worth it.
Oh yeah, we've talked about that. If one kid comes out ahead because of this, and one father feels strong because of this, we've done all we wanted to do.
Yeah. You have
and
with me.
There's one last lesson I'd like to leave, if you don't mind, and that is helping your kids. That's a balance problem, and so should I help my kid do this, or should I let them do it themselves? And I think if a father remembers this, it'll help. You ask yourself when your kid asks you to do something for him, you ask yourself, is my help going to make them stronger, or is it going to make them weaker? And I have an example in my book about helping your little child walk. At first, you want them to hold their hand, hold your finger, and you're helping them, But then later on, when they get stronger, you get 2 or 3 feet away from them and make them come to you. So in the first part, you're helping them be stronger by helping them actually. Later on, you're helping them by not helping them, if you know what I mean. So because you not being there holding them all the time, they're going to have to stretch out and meet you halfway. And there you're not helping them, but you make them stronger. So that goes along with a lot of different things that you do with your kids. You just ask yourself, if I help them do this, is that going to make them a stronger person or a weaker person? And that one thing there will make you a pretty good father, at least making good decisions.
Right. That's a really good check on yourself and what's going on. That and the walking example is perfect. I mean, one, innately they're going to be able to do it themselves, but if they get used to you helping them all the time, they're not going to learn as fast or as well. So that's a great example.
They won't learn as fast.
Right.
That's for sure.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing. For you listening dads, the book is The Power of Dadhood. You go by Michael Byron Smith is your author name.
Author name.
Your official name. So I'll have the links to Amazon.
Name.
Yeah, exactly. I'll put the links there so dads, you can go check it out. If it resonates with you, please pick it up. It's a great resource. And again, Mike, thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you so much. And I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate all you fathers out there. They're doing the best you can for your dads.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that conversation I had with Mike Smith about the power of dadhood. And in keeping with all things dad on this episode, I want to invite you dads, to our dads group here in San Diego. If you're local here, hit me up with an email. I give you details of when and where we meet each and every month. But if you're outside of San Diego, you're around the state, around the country, around the world, join us in our online community that we're creating. And the dads group in Slack is getting bigger and bigger, and it's basically dads supporting other dads. And again, hit me up with an email. I'll give you an invite. You can get in part of what we're creating here in Slack. And also I have my other podcast, the Dadhood Journey podcast, that you can find anywhere where you listen to this podcast. You'll find it, iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, wherever. Just search for the Dadhood Journey and you'll find those episodes that, again, are all devoted to fatherhood, devoted to just being the best dad that you can be. So search for that, get involved where you can, get that support, and I look forward to connecting with you.